we'll begin with the invocation. Albert, would you do the honor? Thank you.
Gracious Father, we bow before your presence. Thank you for this gathering. Father, we thank you for watching over us during the inclement weather, praying for those of us who had lost in the tornado. And as we come this evening, oh Master, let us do the things that we find in the betterment for our city. Continue to watch over us, guide, and keep us. We ask this in your Son Jesus' name. Amen.
Councilwoman Georgia, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Yes, please join me.
Thank you.
Facing the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Marion, will you call the roll, please?
Sir. Chair Puryear.
Here.
Vice Chair Harris.
Here.
Mayor Brown.
Present.
Councilwoman George.
Here.
Mr. Strouser.
Present.
Mr. Morrell.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. As far as minutes are concerned, we don't have a secretary at the moment to present the minutes.
I move that we approve them as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilwoman George to approve the minutes, two sets of minutes. That's November 27th, 2023, and December 11th, 2023 minutes. And we have that seconded by Albert. Do I hear any discussion regarding the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the minutes as written, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Okay. Minutes are approved. We'll move into the next order of business before we get started, and that is an election of officers. Do we have any nominations for officers for the 2024 year?
Nominate Matt Harris as chairman.
Okay, we have a nomination on the floor from Mr. Harris as chairman. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Second. Do we have any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate John Puryear for the secretary.
Second.
Yeah.
Are we doing all the officers at once?
We are. I went out of order on that, yeah.
I thought we were doing one at a time.
Oh, you seconded that?
I second.
Do we have any other nominations for secretary? Did you say secretary or what?
Secretary.
Okay. Do we have any other nominations for secretary? Okay. Entertain nominations for vice chair.
I'll nominate CJ for the vice chair.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any other nominations? Okay, we have a slate of officers. That is Matt Harris as chair, CJ Morrell as vice chair, and myself as secretary. Any discussion on that? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of that slate of officers indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Okay. Motion approved. At this point, let me hand it over to you, Matt. Switch spots.
Chairman, may I be recognized?
Pardon me?
May I be recognized?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to say a big thank you to former chairman, now Secretary Puryear. Years and years and years of service in that role. So now change of leadership on this body, but I really do appreciate you. And I know that I speak for everyone here. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Chair.
All right. Well, we will keep moving on to the next order of business, which is public comment on agenda-related items. I'd like to point out there are several items on tonight's agenda that individually have public comments. You're more than welcome to come up at this time and make your comments on anything on the agenda, but it may be better served if you have comments specific to an agenda item where there is a public comment to do so at that time. So with that, I'll open public comment on agenda-related items. Anyone has comment, please come forward. We'll ask that you state your name for the record and limit comments to no more than 5 minutes. So public comment on agenda items is open.
Good evening. My name is Lina Marler. I live at 1512 Cherokee Road, and I'm here about the banks of Lot 4. So, wow, what a week we've had. The snow is beautiful. I'm glad it warmed up. Living off of Peach Valley Road my whole life has always been interesting in this kind of weather. I remember as a kid, we were out of school for a whole month. Things are not shut down as long now they're not shut down as long now because of road salt and everything else we have. But because of the hills, it's still difficult to get out. We've been in for a week. We didn't even get mail from Wednesday to Saturday. So I thought it was kind of interesting. I was on a friend's Facebook page a couple of days ago, and she asked for the favorite sledding hill that we all had as kids. So I kind of tallied it up, like 80 answers. And the one that got the most votes was Peach Valley Road. So I don't know how many of you on this commission have driven Peach Valley from 109 to Lock 4, but if you haven't, you should. The hills are steep, the road is narrow, and the curves are tight. It made for great sledding, not by me, but by my older brothers, but it is not so great for 2,000 to 3,000 more cars daily, trying to avoid the mess that will happen on Lot 4 Road if you approve this higher density zoning. So over the last year, I've been to a lot of meetings. There's been a lot of citizens that have expressed their thoughts and concerns, and they ask questions before you discuss an agenda item like we're doing tonight. Many are frustrated that I've talked to because after taking the time to show up and ask these questions, there's no answers or discussion to address what they've said. This forum, I understand it's not set up to do that, to let us ask questions during your discussions. So if they're not answered then, we feel like we kind of showed up for nothing and we don't know if we're being heard. So with the vote happening tonight, I feel sure you must have specifics on how to handle the following major issues of concern. We would appreciate you sharing tonight, if possible, how these issues will be resolved. The first one I have is one I always bring up. It's the solution to the Jacobs Heights issue. My whole life, we've gone through roundabouts there, speed bumps, traffic calming signs over the last 40 years. They don't work. You're getting ready to make their issues significantly worse, no doubt about it. Woods Ferry is going to be impacted as well. The only time I've heard any kind of response was at a council meeting after a resident spoke. He was told to be looked into to see what the city could do. This was a few months ago. So what will be done to solve the issue? This is real to everyone that lives there every day. They've spoken at your meetings. The second thing I want to ask about is what will be done about the Hancock intersection. I heard Matt speak to the developer a few months ago. They proposed a possible turn lane. So I'd like to know, did that conversation happen? Has there been any additional follow-up? Have y'all heard on that? I'm not sure how a turn lane is going to solve all those cars, but I'd just like to know if that conversation ever happened. Another one that concerns me might not be as much what y'all deal with, but I think it's an issue for town, is our schools. Gallatin High is at max capacity. The only response I heard was at a council meeting last year that the issue would be worked out over time and there are options. So what does this mean exactly? Rezoning, building new schools? I pulled out an article today about Murfreesboro, which is, probably exploded 15 years before us, 20. They just asked their commission for, and they're trying to fund $132 million to expand 3 of their 5 high schools in their district. 2 more will follow, plus 2 more elementary schools. Is this where we're heading? Or, that's a lot of money, and that's going to come out of the taxpayers' the county commission budget. So these are just a few of the issues that we would like to hear addressed tonight. And so I close with that it hit me today when I was thinking about sledding on those roads, that these same 2 roads we're discussing tonight are in no way any better since we sledded on them 50 years ago. To my knowledge, nothing has been done, possibly something to Lock 4, I'm not sure what. But it's, in my opinion, and many others, reckless to put 2,000 to 3,000 cars a day on roads that are not even close to adequate. You have a responsibility as a planning commission to make sure that growth is done in a way that doesn't have a negative impact on the surrounding area. So thank you for letting me speak tonight, and look forward to hearing your thoughts on those issues.
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Vicki Hendrick, 560 Peach Valley Road, also associated with 1145 Lock 4 Road. I'm here to express my strong opposition to the proposed rezoning of the Green Farm to a higher density. While we may be unable to stop the development, which in my opinion will be detrimental to the area, at least I feel you need to listen to the community as the long-term problems we will definitely have. Most all residents in our area are totally against such a large increase in housing, whether it's townhomes or single-family homes. All will add stress on our schools, the Gallatin Police Department, emergency care, wildlife habitat, property values, utilities. Just snow last week, got a request from TVA to cut back on or conserve our power because we had reached capacity. Just recently, I contacted the Gallatin Police Department about a speeder that about ran me off the road. An officer returned my call and told me that very morning he was out there at Robbie Lane at Peach Valley Baptist Church, and he wrote 40 speeding tickets. He said, "Ma'am, I don't ever write that many in a week." He said, "There is definitely a problem out there. We just don't know how to address it." I don't know how it's going to be resolved if we increase traffic 2,000 cars more a day. So what does this mean with all the increase? I mean, where do we go? I mean, it's like Lana says, no answers. I've mentioned before, a few city council members stated they were against higher density. I would like to believe they will stick to this statement. The developers did revise their plan last time, but no one in our area believed this will change any of our concerns. I feel our elected representatives need to seriously consider the negative impact higher density will have on our safety for the people that live in this area, for the children that may be walking in this area, using the park, the surges of rush hours in the morning and afternoon, which is already disturbing. Look, I know I'm just a face and a mouth to you, fighting against something you all may feel will be an asset to Gallatin. I don't feel that way, and I'm not alone. Citizen involvement means I'm doing my best to make a positive contribution to making my community a better place. Fortunately, I haven't had to do this alone. Thank goodness for all the people here that show their face and try to stand up here and present their compassion for our area, what we feel for our area, and want you to have the same compassion back. Let's see, I did want to mention, I think I would have felt a little easier if the developers would have ever come to the area residents and kind of discussed things with us and showed us that they really cared about us. I'll end with this. My grandmother used to tell me this: do what is right even when no one's looking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Michelle Juvance, 1335 Long Hollow Pike. Mayor Brown, it would be kind of cool if you would introduce the new planning commissioner. I don't know who he is, and I think a lot of us are kind of curious. I am going to speak on the Lock 4, banks at Lock 4, even though it's not the time for the public hearing for that. I think I'll just do that now since the other two ladies just did the same thing. And I've been coming to these meetings for enough years to actually know that what the public says, like what us citizens come and say, does not have any effect or any influence on you. I've watched that for years. So I'm not in any way deluded that what I'm going to say is going to matter at all when it comes to your vote. But I don't care about that. I am just here to actually put something on the record, and I want it to be on the record on purpose. I believe that this is the wrong development for this area, especially after the tornado that we had last month. There was a lot of damage. What I noticed with this plan is that none of the homes in this plan have basements. Even after the tornado happened, our previous planner, Bill McCord, stood here and made a presentation and showed on the map where the tornado went through and compared it with the previous large tornado that did cause a lot of damage and even death. And it was almost the same path. This is a tornado pathway. One of my friends who lives in Nichols Circle and has lived there, she built her house 40 years ago, and she was sick this summer, and I took her a tomato pie, and we were sitting and talking, and she said, oh yeah, this is Tornado Alley. We call this Tornado Alley. And this is before this tornado happened. This was this summer. And I was kind of like, wow. And then when the tornado happened, I was like, oh yeah, she knows. She's lived there for 40 years. So to build homes without basements in a known tornado pathway, because we know that there's going to be more tornadoes that go in that area. We know that. It's wrong, and I think almost criminal. I think if someone wants to build their own house without a basement and they know it, that's okay. But for developers to actually do that, that could be a criminal thing to do. I think that any home that's built in a known tornado pathway should have a basement. I think that this development should be large estate homes, or not homes, but large estate lots with homes that have basements. I do not think that this development is good because it has 3-story townhouses lined up in rows. And if a tornado went through that, like that is just a terrible thing to think about. The day after the tornado, I was at my friend Mary's house. She's been here a lot, but she couldn't come tonight. She's in a different meeting right now, and she lives on like just a few houses away from Aqua Drive, across from where the main entrance for this development is proposed. She lives on Lock 4 Road, and I was there, and part of her roof came off and landed in the green farm, and we were there to help clean up, and it was awful. Like, it was scary for her, and she told me that her and John were down to the basement during the tornado, and she could hear her roof coming off, and she told him, our roof's coming off. And she told me that their house she was down in the basement. They have a basement, thank God. She told me that their house is built really solid. There's massive steel beams in that house. That's the kind of house that should be built in a known tornado pathway. So anyway, I wanted to be sure that that was put on the record. Thanks.
Thank you.
Because I've been prepared at all the other meetings, and I felt like it was not worth my extreme effort to try to be prepared. Because again, I feel like whatever we say doesn't really matter. You've made up your mind. You're going to vote on whatever you've already decided. So our
Ma'am,
opinions and feelings.
Can you state your name for the record, please? Sorry.
Carolyn
All right.
Seagraff.
Thank you.
And I'm on Lakeshore Drive. Okay, sorry. So I'm not really prepared, but when she mentioned the tornado, it reminded me of something that, again, I live on Lakeshore, and when they built those condos, when Goodall built those condos, that's the only other time I'd ever come and spoken, and it was because that was a 100-year flood zone. And I mentioned that's a flood zone, but they said they would build up the land so it wouldn't flood, which was great. However, then from that point on, Lakeshore Drive then and that whole area started having significant flooding areas. Because, yeah, they built that up, but it didn't absorb the water. It just diverted it now into another area in which couldn't handle it. So I'm just thinking that as we're getting ready to go through a pretty heavy rainstorm for the next few days, it would be interesting to see how much water. I think they're saying there could be up to 4 to 5 inches of rain. just what that does for the city, and you have flooding areas anyway. This area that they're building on presently absorbs a lot of water, and it controls it and moves it into, into the lake. So it would be interesting from an engineering standpoint that someone look at that and also analyze what that's going to do when all that's concrete, our roofs, because it's really going to impact it when you put that many concrete and roof over an area that's been used to absorbing whatever's coming. So that was just something that just hit me, that's really significant. And my house was one that was destroyed in the 2006 tornado. So that Lakeshore area, Nichols Lane, that whole area, it can easily take out in a blink of the eye. And no, we didn't have basements, but our house it was a strong brick house. And it was not a high condo or a complex. But still, now we do have a safe room. And I think all the houses that were built afterwards either put in a safe room or put in some of them put them in the basement, or I'm sorry, in the garage, where you could dig down and build something. But we have, our laundry room is actually a safe room. It's a freestanding concrete brick with rebar that would withstand it. So that is a concern you need to be aware of. But I think the water right now is going to be your big issue. And I can just see a lot of flooding and additional cost, I guess, to the city. I also understand that the county has a lot of responsibility, like for schools, all the county, those are taxes, even though the city might say your taxes aren't going up, but there's no way that the county is going to be able to build new schools and take care of all the other county costs without going up on taxes. So just keep in mind, what you're building here needs to be reduced to where it's a little more manageable, so that, again, you don't have all those additional issues that are going to impact the whole city and everyone's cost. So I just ask you to consider that. Low density, we've lost the battle. We realize it. The war is over. We tried to fight it. So at this point, if you can just be considerate of how you can reduce it and make it manageable for the whole city, not just our little neighborhood, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no one else wishing to speak for public comment on agenda-related items, I'm going to declare that closed. And we will move on to the consent agenda items on the agenda. Oh, my apologies. Yes, ma'am.
Would be nice to introduce the new planning commissioner. I failed to do that with the election of officers, and really, I guess I'll let him introduce himself, but it is Mike Thompson, and he is a relatively new resident to Sumner County, but we're delighted to have him with his background, knowledge, and expertise come on board here, not as a person technically in the field of planning, but with lots of exposure, ideas, thoughts, and suggestions. Whatever you'd like to share about yourself.
Thank you, Paige. Yeah, name's Mike Thompson. Fairly new, been in Gallatin for about just under 2 years now. Moved here from Northern California, where I ran in a technology company. I sold my company, came here, retired, and sat on several boards back in California, from economic development to nonprofit boards, so the background from a board perspective. And that when got introduced to the mayor and had some conversations about it, sounded like a great opportunity to help the future development and help Gallatin grow smartly in a safe manner. And I'm excited to be here and look forward to working with the team up here. And yeah, happy to be here.
Happy to have you.
Welcome, Mike. Now we'll move on to the consent agenda items. We have 7 items on tonight's consent agenda. I'm going to recuse myself from item number 4. With that, I'll entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recuse myself from items 4 and 6.
So noted.
Chairman, I'll have to recuse myself from item 3.
The whiteboard.
Sorry. All right, well, with those recusals on the consent agenda, do I hear a motion for the approval of the consent agenda?
Need to divide them out and vote individually with the recusals.
Yeah, that many. Okay. Pardon?
The way you guys did it is fine.
The way that it is fine?
Yeah.
Okay. No?
You want them to do it individually?
We can group the ones that have no recusals, but we can
Correct. I would take out the ones that don't have recusals and then vote on those separately. The ones that have recusals, vote on separately.
Okay, so I heard 4, 3, 4, and 6. Okay. So with that, we'll amend the consent agenda, removing items 3, 4, and 6. And with that, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second by CJ. Any discussion on the consent agenda, less those 3 items? All right, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of consent agenda, except items 3, 4, and 6, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, well, those items will pass. With that, we'll move on to item 3, which is Avery Trace preliminary plat.
I'll make a motion to approve item 3.
I have a motion to approve item 3 with a second by Albert. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving item 3, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes with 1 recusal. We'll move on to item number 4, which is Resolution 2024-016, Nexus TN Phase 2 South, Section 3, and I'll ask CJ to take this item since I'm recusing myself from it.
Yeah, so item number 4, Nexus 10, Phase 2, Section 3, subdivision 2023-0451. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So passes unanimously with 1 recusal.
Ask for any opposition.
Oh, is there anyone opposed?
I had 2 abstaining.
2 abstain? Did you abstain from 4? Okay, so 2 recusals. Okay.
All right, with that, we'll move on to item 6, which is Villas on the Green, Clubhouse and Pool Revised Finer Master Development Plan. And I'll make a motion to approve that.
I'll second it.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes unanimously with 1 recusal. All right, that takes us now to our regular agenda items. We'll move on to item 8, which is Resolution 2024-002, 392 Nichols Lane, accessory structure. Jim?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The owner and applicant, Jim Carpenter, staff planner. The owner and applicant request approval of a site plan for a 2,340 square foot accessory structure with alternative architecture on a 0.93 acre lot, zoned R40 low density residential district located at 392 Nichols Lane. The main structure is 30 by 48 with a 30 by 30 kind of overhang area. This detached accessory structure will be primarily constructed of metal. While it doesn't match the architecture of the primary building on the lot, there are similar buildings in the neighborhood, including next door. Staff does recommend denial of this item.
All right, thanks, Jim. Do you have a representative for the applicant here this evening?
My name's Austin Christian. I came to the last meeting and just wanted to clear one thing up with you guys. It's actually primarily framed and the structure's primarily done with wood. The outer portion of the building is the architectural steel. But the main reason I wanted to come up was just mention to you guys, whenever I came to the last meeting, I had talked about putting something together, having some photos of buildings that we've built that are this exact same exterior facade, just to give you guys an idea of the caliber of buildings that we're building, and also show you, where these buildings are being built in relation to different caliber of homes. And since that meeting 2 weeks ago, I just wanted to go ahead and extend the information to you guys that I've had my advertising and marketing manager go ahead and start putting together a OneDrive. We have over 50 structures that we've built just in the past 2 weeks that have I've got multiple photos of, so that we can start sharing that information with you guys as y'all look into the ordinances and talk about the facades of these buildings going forward in the city. So just wanted to let you guys know that and maybe get a little bit of contact information potentially on who that information needs to be shared with at that time. And of course, I know that it's not now, but I just want to make sure that I get that information to you guys as quickly as possible or whenever it's needed.
I appreciate it. When time comes, Ms. Jillian will be your point of contact for that, and appreciate you putting that together. It's, from going back to our work session, we were talking about as we're rewriting the zoning ordinance project, this is something that needs to be addressed, so we don't have to keep having these come to the commission for the alternate architecture. So,
and we're going to continue to, over the however long it takes for you to reach out or whatever, we're going to continue to start gathering this information for you guys. And, it's for you, it's for, this city as well as the other 20 city jurisdictions that we deal in.
Yeah.
So it's good information for us, but I think it'll be very useful for you guys. So hopefully by the time that you reach out or we get involved in that, I'll have hundreds of structures completed that we can share with you guys to help out. So thank you.
that sounds great. And Jim, just kind of clarifying back from our work session, there's other similar structures in the adjacent area, and it's pretty consistent with other ones we've seen.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, I'll make a motion that we approve it.
Second.
All right. We got a motion and a second for approval. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, likes? All right, passes unanimously. All right, we'll move on to item number 9 on our agenda, which is resolution 2024-003, 903 Morris Drive accessory structure.
This is a request for an accessory structure with an alternative architecture plan. This is located at 903 Morris Lane. They are requesting a 3-car garage on the back of their property that is primarily made of metal. This is not consistent with the existing house. They have provided a plot plan. They do have some easements in the rear of their property, but they have contacted a surveyor about knowing where those easements are. They've double-checked about where utilities are. They don't believe there will be any issues with that proceeding forward. They've also provided a map of similar structures in their neighborhood, which is on your screen now. Staff did recommend denial of this item based on the architecture, and I believe the applicant is here to discuss this evening.
All right, thanks, Sheila. Do you have a representative for the applicant present? Do you have anything to say? But, yes, sir, if you would please come up to the microphone so we can hear you. We're going to record the meeting.
Bruce Winchesky, 903 Morris Drive. Took a lot of pictures of locations in our neighborhood. 10 of them were metal, and the other 20 did not match the homes. They were different materials. So it seems like we would be conforming to what the neighborhood is already doing.
Thank you. So,
Motion to approve with architecture as submitted.
Second.
I had a motion by CJ, a second by Eileen. Any further discussion on this item? I see none. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you, sir. All right, item 10 is resolution 2024-004, 1252 Woodvale Drive accessory structure.
Good evening, Commissioners. The owner and applicant is requesting approval of a site plan for a 440 square foot accessory structure with alternative architecture on a 0.44 acre lot located in the Woodville Estates subdivision. This property is owned as R15 medium density residential located at 1252 Woodville Drive. Planning Department staff recommends denial. However, it should be worth noting that there are several other structures that do not entirely match the houses that they are on. One being, sorry, I pointed at the wrong area, right next door. And then from research by going through the subdivision and looking at Google Maps, there appears to be at least 3 to 4 other structures in that subdivision that have, or 3 or 4 other properties that have accessory structures.
Thank you. Representative for the applicant
is present.
All right, great.
Name's Larry Biaco, again at 1252 Woodville Drive.
You have anything else to add? I think he did a pretty good job.
No, actually, he kind of said it all.
All right, sounds good, yeah. This is very similar to the other ones we've had.
Yeah, it is.
So I've got a motion approved by Albert,
Second.
a second by CJ. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, sirs.
Next item on the agenda is item 11, which is Resolution 2023-116, the banks at Lock 4, rezoning with preliminary master development plan.
The owner and applicant request approval of an ordinance to zone 235 acres that are currently not zoned, that were recently annexed into the city to R8 PRD, medium-density residential planned residential district, and to rezone about 60 acres from the R40 low-density residential district to the R8 PRD district as well. This is with a preliminary master development plan for the banks at Lock 4, containing 593 single-family detached residential lots, 167 attached residential lots. This is located east of Lock 4 Road and north of Peach Valley Road. This plan is within an area that was recently designated as the Suburban Community Character Area, which recommends a density count of 2 to 5 units per acre. The proposed plan, after some changes over the last few months, is approximately 2.6 units per acre, which is consistent with that recommended density. It will have access to Lock 4 Road and Peach Valley Road and be the southern extension of a future connection to Nichols Lane. There are a variety of housing types that they are proposing in this development, both attached and detached units. The architecture was provided in your packet, and based on the size of the lot, determined what kind of masonry requirements they would put on themselves. They did include what materials would be permitted and which ones would not be permitted. This would be mostly a brick, stone, and hardy board product as opposed to a vinyl product. They did also provide a number of streetscapes highlighting on-street parking, especially to supplement the townhome areas where we know parking can be an issue. There are a number of greenway trails as well as widened sidewalks along the main boulevards. They are providing the buffer yards as required by code. Most of these are within the open space. This plan does provide a substantial amount of open space. Only 28% of the site is required for open space. This plan provides about 50%. And that is a lot of your amenities that they are providing, natural tree canopy, as well as stormwater mitigation and natural streams in the area, and a TVA line on the north side of the property. The architecture included in your packets is broken down on based on the different lot sizes with material lists, and how that breakdown will progress through the development. There were also a number of proposed road improvements off-site that were included as an attachment in your packet that were based off of a traffic impact study. And I believe we've had some discussion on those in the past, but we can get into that more if we want further discussion, and I'll allow engineering to speak on that. This item will require a public comment, and with your recommendation, it would go on to City Council for the review process and another public comment at that stage. Thank you. The staff does recommend approval of this plan with conditions.
Thank you, ma'am. Since this item does come with a public comment, we will do that, and then we'll hear from the applicant and give them an opportunity to address any concerns that come up that are new. So with that, I'll open public comment on item number 11. And again, state your name for the record and limit comments to no more than 5 minutes, please.
Evening, Chairman. Mike, welcome aboard. Congratulations for the move from Cali. Pascal Javens, 1335 Longola Park. I'm here as councilman for District 3, and because my constituent expect me to come and talk about that project. And they reach out to me with their main concerns. I'm pretty sure it's going to go through council, so I'm gonna try to be brief. I'll keep discussion at the council level, but again, I think we are at the stage of the city where we need to start being honest with each other. All right. I was there when the developer made that beautiful presentation. And the stuff I learned all these years is that when someone tried to oversell something, I mean, there's probably an issue. Lot of open space, but again, TVA easement they can't use, creek they can't use, water flow they can't use, floodplain they can't use. Come back to what's really happening, and it's all about the dollar sign. Dealing with creek is really expensive, and I know about that because we had that issue near my home, and that's how we're able to kind of slow down development back there. But again, the elephant in the room is traffic. That's not going to be solved. And this was given to me by a constituent, was ordered by the city from 2007, widening of Lock 4 Road. And in 2007, that document was already saying that Lock 4 Road was not adequate for more development. I was not there in 2007, but for what I know, nothing has been done since. Lock 4 Road was not widened. It's still the same. I go there regularly. We have friends living on Lock 4. I was there during the tornado again. I have concern with that, because when I look at the plan there, there is a bunch of homes who are right on the path of the tornado. And I was there and I saw the damage done on that side. I saw the pylon, the electrical pylon on the ground, destroyed. So that's a concern. The traffic study, I'm pretty sure we're going to hear from engineering, but I was able to get it today. I started reading it, but it's 200-something pages, so I'm not done with there. But our engineer telling there is still issue with the traffic study, and that's what he put on his email. So again, I think we're rushing. All the constituents I talk to are not opposed to developing the area. They're opposed to what's coming there. If you go to one of the maps in a packet and you look at the zoning around 40, R40, 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 R40. I think the lowest we've gone was R15. So again, we had less people talking because they get tired. This stuff has been going on for years now. The change of character area was the first start. I'm not going to talk about that because I think what was done was not appropriate, and that should not have gone that way. But again, we're kicking the can down the road. Lock 4 Road cannot accept that kind of traffic will be provided by the development. And again, if we look at zoning, the first thing you see in the zoning ordinance is that any new development needs to match what's around it. RIPRD doesn't match what's around it. So we have zoning. You guys give exemption every time something arrives. Again, there is exemption on lots. That should not be. That's why we have a zoning for. We need to stop reducing lot size. Each development will come in front of you, get reduced lot size, and that go on. No problem, no question asked. So again, I think at official, we need to listen to our constituents. And what they say that they not opposed to the development, but they opposed to that particular density. So appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Javance.
Hello, I'm Mary Simpson. I live at 1275 Lot 4 Road. Speaking about the banks of Lot 4, you know, it's going to really impact all of us that live there already. And as I agree with everything everybody else has already said about the traffic and the schools and just this particular architectural style doesn't match anything at all on Lot 4 Road. It seemed like it would be a better fit somewhere else, like off of Greenlee or something where there's not an existing neighborhood and houses, and it just doesn't seem like it fits. And I'm kind of like some of the other people I've spoken before, and sometimes we feel like we're not being heard, you know, again, about the traffic. I saw one turn lane that y'all just showed, like at Aqua Drive, maybe, but I don't know if that's how that's going to impact getting from our house all the way down to like Nashville Pike if we want to go to Walmart or even go to 109 from Nichols Lane. All that hadn't really been addressed if we've got all this additional traffic. You know, if we've got 760 houses, probably at least 2 drivers, 2 cars per each house. So, you know, you're looking at almost 2,000 cars additionally every day. Not to mention the schools already overcrowded. Who's gonna pay for that? You know, we will eventually. We're offering like all these services to this. We live on Lot 4 Road, and our house was built in the 70s. We're not even on sanitary sewer. I mean, so we're offering services to new houses that residents who've lived here for years don't have, and I don't understand that. To me, that's just weird, and we can almost smell the sewer plant sometimes on some days when the wind's just right, and it's just amazing. You know, same thing, cutting back power, and do we have enough water, and all these things for all these residents. It's just amazing to me that we keep approving and approving and approving, and the density, like Pascal said, you know, they lowered the density, but half of the land on that property is not buildable, and it's so it's kind of a moot point. Yeah, they lowered the density. However, it's on, if you count the density for the area they're building on, it is higher density. So, you know, taking out all the green space that's not buildable. I just wanted to go on record to say that I was against development, and like I said, I've spoken before, and I just wish y'all would kind of think about all of us that live there already. And we're not against the Greens developing their property. You understand that, you know, that's their property, and they deserve to be able to sell that if they like and have it developed. But something that would better fit our neighborhood would be much nicer, like the estate lots or at least nice brick houses, kind of like Fairview. You know, who don't want to live next to Fairview? You know, if you had a development like that come in, probably most of us would say, oh, yeah, that would be great. You know, that's fine. But the houses, like they were talking about with the tornado, that TVA tower, the very first one on the front of that property with a tornado, was twisted and laying flat on the ground. And I mean, it's a huge tower. It's not just a pole, it's a tower. And something that has that much force going through there, like they said, if those houses had been there with 3 stories, there wouldn't have been anything left of them, I'm pretty sure, because there was trash and stuff from the houses, existing houses on Lot 4, that was all in that field, on the green farm itself. So it's kind of scary. So I'm kind of, from a safety standpoint as well. But anyway, I just wish you'd consider gracious and growing Gallatin, make us gracious again, because window growth is obvious, but it would like to be done in a nice way, a better way, so we could all appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no one else getting up to speak, want to close public comment on item number 11 and ask a representative of the applicant.
Hi, Jim Harrison, CSTG. Tonight, we have with us also the planner and the home builder as well, in case there are any other questions. I'm going to really keep tonight pretty short. We went through this about a month ago. I know everybody's seen a presentation. I just want to give a brief recap of everything that we talked about. Some of these will address some of the questions that have come up tonight. The plan before you tonight is quite different from what you saw a year ago. We've listened to comments. We've made observations that have been expressed. We had a neighborhood meeting. We listened to concerns as we've gone through council. And so we've done some things to change and adapt and improve the plan as part of that process. Very thankful for the input, very thankful for staff and all that input that we had to really meet the high standards that Gallatin has, and grateful to be in the city. Some of those key items reflected the density. We reduced the density by 117 lots, eliminated front-loaded townhomes, which got us down to, as Jillian mentioned, 2.6 units per acre. I like to state it as 2.58 because I'm an engineer, so I'm kind of a nerd. So, anyway, 2.6 if you round it off. That's on the lower side of the land use policy. We understand that. We appreciate that. We want that to be the case. The density is now less than most of the developments that have been approved in the city over the last decade. We've got over 3 miles of greenway. We've got over 3 miles of nature trails. They're incorporated into the high-quality open space around all those environmental features that were mentioned, which happen to be creeks, which are now going to be preserved without cattle running through them and all kinds of various things. It's going to preserve those for the long haul. We've also got 8 miles of sidewalks. Residents can take numerous paths through this subdivision to walk through all this very high-quality open space, and we want to provide all those options. We also are connecting, we're doing substantial improvements in the Lakeside Park, which is on the west side of Lock 4 Road. We're connecting that, we're making pedestrian connections from that over to this open space and to the Greenway Trail, doing the Greenway Trail along Lock 4 Road, preserving the trees that are there right now, creating more natural space, creating buffers around the entire perimeter of the property to create a really, really, really nice feeling for people that are walking. 50% of the site is preserved in open space. That's 148 acres. That's a substantial piece. That's a park. So I just wanted to mention that. And I think one of the reasons it's called the banks, and I want to mention this again, is because we started thinking about the park that's on the west side of Lock 4 and connecting that when we started the design of this project, because we wanted people to be able to go down and walk alongside the lake frontage. We also coordinated very closely with David Brown to work on what improvements would help benefit that park, would help with improvements to make that nicer. And we're doing that as part of that as well. We're spending about $3 million worth of, the developer's spending $3 million worth of development on off-site improvements. Those include traffic improvements. I know we showed something at the last presentation where we talked about the study. We went through a full traffic study with KCI, very well known, very well respected throughout all of Tennessee, quite frankly, nationally. That traffic study was reviewed by the city's consultant. It was reviewed by engineering. We went through it in great detail. We looked at the entire area, at all the key intersections, to make sure it not only addresses our traffic that we would add at total build out, but also some existing challenges that exist, mainly at Hancock on the north end of Lock 4 Road. We have also addressed this, another aspect, which was mentioned a little bit with Peach Valley. We have collector roads built into this development. Those collector roads create options and choices for people to make decisions on where they want to go. It creates more connectivity. Those are built per the new design standard. One of the things that was mentioned in the public comment, and Aaron can confirm this if he wants, Nick and I have talked about this, but we're doing a safety audit on Peach Valley Road to go through and look at shoulders. We're going to look at any of the slopes, anything that needs to be done from a safety standpoint there. So we are looking at that. Water lines have been oversized and improved off-site to provide fire flows for surrounding neighborhoods, to provide improved fire flows to the surrounding neighborhoods, in addition to meeting our capacity. We've upsized the sewer force main, coordinated that. Both of those things we coordinated with David Kellogg with Gallatin Public Utilities. Sewer line force main is going to be built along the entire western boundary. That will provide additional capacity for overflows for the city to the treatment plant. That's beyond what we had to do for our development. So we're doing that. That's just part of the $3 million. The last thing that I'll kind of comment on as an item is the schools. Adequate capacity is in the school system. This is pretty close to me because I've worked for the last decade getting rid of portables, adding to schools all over the county, including the new campus. So adequate capacity is built into the system. This project will develop over the 5 to 8 years, and it will allow for adjustments with students over that time period. The capacity's there. And I've heard that over and over. It's a little frustrating, truthfully, because a decade or so ago, adequate capacity had fallen behind, but now it's there. And so I just mention that because there's been a lot of very, very good work to go into that. It wasn't just me, but I was part of working on that. That transition allows that accommodation to be made for students, and adequate capacity is there. But in summary, if I sound a little jittery, it's because my thyroid medication's off. So just as an excuse, if I sound jittery, they've got it a little high. My doctor hadn't got it dialed in quite right. So in summary, I just want to say, providing this new neighborhood, it provides needed housing for Gallatin families. It provides that second and third home. It provides, probably frees up some homes that were first-time homes in Gallatin for other people that need homes. We've addressed infrastructure needs. We were asked by the city to do that. We've looked very carefully at that. We're very thankful for the time that people have spent at the city with city staff and the Planning Commission and council, who has given us input on what needs are there. We've done that. It provides park-like open spaces that are phenomenal. We are here tonight really just to answer questions, but mainly we're here tonight to say we're thankful to be in Gallatin, where the standards are high, and we're doing developments in neighborhoods that'll be beneficial for our future. With that, I'm just here to answer questions.
That will open the floor to questions for the applicant or for staff.
You want to talk about talk through the off-site traffic improvements, if Aaron wants to do that.
I mean, that's been my big concern through this whole thing is the off-site traffic improvements and the timing at which they go in. So Aaron, can you speak to that a little bit about?
Sure, I can. I think it was at the last work session, Jim can correct me if I'm wrong, but you passed out a summary of all of those improvements as well as the, okay, yeah, there we go, the key improvements through here, so I can go through those. So this is a left turn lane improvements at the main entrance to Lock 4 Road. And this will be done before the first CO. This is on Lock 4. Then down at Hancock, there's two options for this, either constructing a roundabout, or maybe the next slide has the, or constructing a traffic signal with left turn lanes from the southbound Lock 4 onto Hancock, a left and right turn lane on Hancock, and it's not shown here, but the study does recommend a northbound right turn lane from Lock 4. So a roundabout or traffic signal would be, is identified as an improvement that would be, should be done before the first phase of development or prior to the occupancy of the 134th unit. I think right now we would prefer to see a roundabout go in place, but the traffic signal is there if constructability as they get into more of the design. If a roundabout is not feasible at this location, then a traffic signal would be the next best option. And then here, there's also two options. This is at the Nichols Lane intersection with Lock 4. Proposing a roundabout at this intersection as well. And if that is not feasible, then making this an always stop. And based on their, summary that this should be installed before the 630th residential CO is issued. They also identify this Clear Lake Meadows realignment that is kind of flexible when it's implemented. If development in this area seems to be going at a more rapid pace, then they could switch focus and go ahead and get this alignment done that will help with the overall build-out of the Clear Lake Meadows extension to go from 109 all the way down to Peach Valley Road. They are proposing, of course, this would be at the final phase, to look at the traffic signals and try to optimize the timings for the influx of traffic. And then something else that they have is they've agreeing to contribute a pro rata share to help with the traffic calming issues on Belvedere and Peninsula as identified, based off of how much of their traffic would be using that as a cut through. They are aware of that issue and are working with us on that. It was mentioned that the traffic impact study isn't fully approved yet, and there's just a few minor things to be done on there. All of these attachments, they are in the traffic impact study itself. They are in Word form saying this is what needs to be done. We would like to see these details that CSDG has provided to also be included in that, and maybe one or two other minor things. But we've been through several iterations with the traffic impact study and feel pretty comfortable with the recommendations and the timing of the improvements.
What about Peach Valley? Peach Valley?
Oh, and the Peach
Valley safety audit.
Yes, and they will be working through with that.
Sorry, I didn't hear you, Mr. Harris.
Safety audit, we'll be doing a safety audit on that. Nick and I had talked about that, about the timing of the last planning commission, to make sure that we were confirming to do that.
My understanding, I guess, just maybe clarify a little bit too, is the traffic study would be finalized and incorporated before the final master development plan would allow the project to proceed though, right?
Yes. Yeah, 'cause technically the traffic impact study is not required until the final master development plan, and we're at the zoning with PMDP, so they've got it in early and been working through that.
And will the safety audit be finalized, I guess, or at least be part of the recommendations in the traffic study prior to the FMDP?
Yeah, we'll do that and coordinate with engineering staff on when that's appropriate to do, whether it's more appropriate to do that in advance of that connection on that
Okay.
end. Yeah.
I guess, does engineering make the call on when Clear Lake Meadows goes in, or at least gets reworked?
Am I just the realignment?
Yeah.
So there are two options in their recommendations, either prior to the completion or could be completed by the 543rd CO. So there's some flexibility in that.
But y'all have made it far enough to, I guess, prioritize these, and that's why they're going in, and based on recommendations from KCI.
Correct.
So would the scenario be for the realignment of Clear Lake Meadows, if other properties south of that were to develop sooner, that would change the timing on that?
We have agreed, and it's good, I need to state that for the record, because Nick and I have talked about that. If something were to happen, some other project were to come along and trigger that they would pay for it, that amount, that we think it's probably around $400,000 to $450,000, that they could shift that to a different location if they needed to.
But if that were to shift, would it slow down the timing of the other improvements? Or would those still be done as needed based on the study?
I don't think it would affect the other improvements. I think we're working on Hancock first, Lot 4 next. Obviously, our main entrance first as well.
I mean, if I remember correctly, the traffic impact study didn't even include Clear Lake Meadows as an option. So Clear Lake Meadows was a bonus.
We don't have any impact on Clear Lake Meadows and the improvements that are done there from a traffic standpoint. But we're doing it as part of this project, just to do our part.
I mean, I've long expressed the traffic on Lot 4 in that area has been a concern, and I'm not going to say I read every page of the 200 and something page traffic study, but I made it through most of it. And, Aaron and I spent a couple hours going through it, and, I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, because when I read through that and we met on it, what I saw through that study was that if nothing's done with this area, even if this neighborhood is not built, the traffic in the Lock 4 area is going to continue to get worse. Am I correct that with these improvements being made, even with the additional traffic, it winds up being a net improvement to the road network, even with the extra traffic?
That's correct.
For the roundabout at Hancock, I'm assuming discussions have already started with right-of-way acquisition.
That's part of the reason we did two options, was to make sure if there was an issue with right-of-way as we went through that process, we had a feasible plan to work either way.
Either way, okay.
Yeah. There's a driveway at that location that we need to coordinate.
Right at the intersection, yeah.
Yes.
It's tough.
That's an intersection regardless of this that needs some love. I mean, I drive through that area. I've on purpose driven through there more in the last few months, and it seems like there's a lot of people that use the Hancock Street through Lock 4 as a cut through to get to Nashville Pike. It's not even traffic. Yeah, it's not even traffic necessarily coming off of the Lock 4 Peninsula. So, yeah, an improvement there would go a long way for sure.
Thank you for all the changes you've made.
Yeah, I will say the chart that, I think this is in the staff report, the chart that planning included in their staff report that compared this development to other developments that have already been constructed in the city was super helpful. And to know that this one is less dense with 50% open space than some of the largest developments we have in the city, Fairview to be included, and that includes the golf course, is I think a positive for the city. I don't think we're getting, to me, I don't feel like it's getting too out of hand whenever you can compare it to other developments. And on top of that, they've really worked with the city and really worked to, I guess, better the density over the course of the entitlement process and everything else. I think that the offsite improvements is a bigger win. I get probably the number one win from a city perspective, because that's dollars that the city can save from making those improvements themselves. And we've already discussed the fact that it would make the overall traffic impact better.
I just want to go through some of the stuff that was addressed to see if y'all feel like we've covered it adequately for people's information.
Yes, ma'am.
There was mention about Jacobs Heights, but I think somebody actually meant Belvedere and Peninsula. I think that's what I heard. I think they mean that, which I thought was Payne Estates. So I think that was covered. We talked about the Hancock intersection. Mr. Harrison, I loved what you said about the schools and how there was a capacity issue at one point. There's far less of one now. Liberty Creek still has a tremendous amount of capacity, and the opportunity is there to shift kids to those schools. Gallatin High School, it is judged as being over capacity because of its common area. The common area is kind of building lot, which was the cafeteria. Some of us remember that experience. And so the common area is the difficult area in the school, and it has actually been more crowded than it is currently. I find it really interesting, and I've said this a couple of times because I hear it said so many times, and it just makes me really, really sad that, Gallatin's growth is impacting the county. Gallatin is causing the schools to be overcrowded, Gallatin. But if you look back over the school population increase back to 2000, the average increase has been about 1.5% per year, with the highest percentage increase actually happening in the early 2000s. It's actually, I think, declined this past year. Of course, a lot of factors, lots of things are changing, and I think Gallatin, particularly being attractive to retirees, affects that as well. But beyond that, people are having fewer children. They're waiting later to have them. They are homeschooling them. They're sending them to private school. All kinds of things affect our school population. And we do want our kids in schools to do well, and they do well at Gallatin High School. That was one of the things that just broke my heart was to hear how poorly the kids at Gallatin High School were doing, and they're not. The population that that school has and the scholarship dollars and the test scores that they have is something we should be proud of. And people who send their kids there should be proud of that. So that's about the schools. I'm not going to talk about the tornado thing because I have a long history of a lot of tornadoes that have come through Gallatin, and we go decades without them, and then we do seem to have a string of them, and it has been uncanny that the path has been similar, but I don't think we can make development decisions based on that. I was concerned about the lady that talked about the flooding from Goodall townhomes onto Lake Shore. I'm assuming that stormwater is addressing that. If not, would you please make a note? And for Mr. Wagner, lots of off-site improvements. We mentioned the comparison to Fairview. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to say, because I can't remember, Ms. Ogden, you may help me. Previously, in the land use plan that was done prior to most of ours presence here, it was actually a higher impact zoning approved for that area.
It was.
It was called
It was regional, I believe,
Emerging walkable
something.
walkable
Emerging
community.
walkable, that was what it was
Yes,
called.
yes, it was. But
And
yes, it was
so-
higher than even the suburban.
And
that
then
it
the
is now.
history about how it happened was it was proposed by the consultants that it be what it is now. This body, when I wasn't on it and some of the others weren't either, it was changed to a less dense than what the consultants recommended. It was then changed back, but it still had a lesser impact than what the initial one did the last go-round. And so I want
The emerging walkable was up to 8 units per acre.
8 units per acre. And so I do think that the 2.57 homes per acre and the 50, I forgot what the 50%,
50% open space.
50% of open space is.
I think it's actually 2.58.
2.5, okay, I
You're
didn't
round-
go
you're
out that many
You're rounding it
decimals.
down a little too far.
Didn't go out that many decimals. I mean, I hear all the time, you know, we don't mind it being developed, we just want it to be something good. And I think at the end of the day, that this is really something good. And nobody wants something built next to them. I sure don't. I have condos behind me, but I don't mind it now. You know, if it happened while I lived there, it'd been like, oh, but you know, you things change and it's difficult, and being, as someone who's from here, it's really difficult. But then I also know a lot of really awesome people who have moved here as a result of the growth that we have had. And we have amenities that we would not have had without the growth that we have had. I guess the last thing that I'll say, I guess on the soapbox, and talking about, you know, what the city of Gallatin is doing to the county, truly what the city of Gallatin does for the county is they subsidize the county. We contribute more than our fair share. And when you break it down per capita and what is raised by our industry, by our sales tax, by our property tax, and then what we would spend based on our, you know, rough calculations, but our finance director and our county's finance director actually worked on that a couple of years ago. And it is the dynamic of cities and counties. And yes, we understand that the county in its own rural areas can't support everything that it needs. And I think that the county with its rural areas are a very, very important complement to the cities. And so I think that is the dynamic that is lovely and that we respect and we appreciate and we want to support. So I don't say that's a bad thing. I mean, that's a good thing. But I think the truth needs to be what's out there. So I'm going to say nothing else now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
I think he's answered it quite clearly. Thank you, again.
The staff recommends approval with 3 conditions. Do I hear a motion to approve it?
I move to approve.
Motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, had a motion by Eileen, second by CJ. Any further discussion on the item?
Yeah, I'll just say that the previous MacTech plan from years ago that had the emerging walkable community with densities as high as 8. I was part of that, and it was a gradient plan. It was not one blanket coverage. It was the higher densities north, closer to 109, and the lower density range south, the further you get away from it, because the road infrastructure could handle it. I commend the developer for drawing a really well laid out plan, and if Clear Lake Meadows connected through, I would have no qualms about voting for it. But I've been consistent from the beginning in stating that without Clear Lake Meadows in place or a clear plan to have it put in place in the foreseeable future, I didn't feel like this area could support more than 2 units per acre in density. And so I'll stick with that consistent approach. So I wouldn't be able to vote in favor of this, but I do commend him for the off-site improvements and a well-laid-out plan.
And I would have felt the same way about the Clear Lake Meadows connection if they were going with a higher density on this, but with the not, and having lots of inquiries on the other side of the property, I think that it will get built, and with the number of homes that are here for the period of time that it's going to take you to build those, I think it will be okay.
If there's no further discussion, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, say yes.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Opposed? Okay, so, got 2 opposed, 5 yes, so motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jim. All right, item 12 on the agenda is resolution number 2023-172, Gallatin Gap rezoning with a preliminary master development plan. Staff member.
The owner and applicant request to rezone 14 acres from the CG Commercial General District to the MRO Multiple Residential and Office District, and a little over 14 acres from the PGC Planned General Commercial District to the MRO District, with a preliminary master development plan for Gallatin Gap. The total area of this development is 35 acres. You'll see on your screen, the top portion is currently CG and proposing to go to MRO. The middle portion north of the stream is currently PGC, proposed to go to MRO, and the southern portion below the stream is currently PGC and would remain PGC with this plan. The developer is proposing 372 apartment units and 3 commercial lots. This is located north of Nashville Pike and west of Harris Lane. They did ask for a couple exceptions, which I will call out. They are asking for an exception to the 70% brick stone requirement for the architecture. They are asking also for an exception to the height. They are asking for up to 45 feet tall when MRO only allows up to 35 feet. The height exception is not, is pretty typical for 3-story apartment complexes. They can range anywhere from 38 to up to 50 feet, depending on how the slope of the roof pitch. They did provide the necessary plans of a drainage plan as well as a landscaping plan. You can see the 3 commercial outparcels along Nashville Pike going across a stream buffer with the apartment complex in the rear adjacent to the Gap facility that is off of Harris Lane. And then the architecture, which is a predominantly hardy board product with some brick on the front and rear of the buildings. The brick ranges to be about 20 to 30% per building. And they did provide some renderings of the potential public boulevard that would come in and access the apartment complex. They did not go into detail about the commercial outparcels that are shown on the plan, but they do show what is possibly a convenience store, a drive-through, and a typical retail building. But there's a number of uses that are permitted in PGC, and those would have to come back and have their own plans get approved. They are proposing a density of 13.2 units per acre. This property is along Nashville Pike, which is predominantly in the general urban community character area, which has a recommendation of 5 to 15 units per acre. MRO does allow up to 14.52 unit per acre, which is consistent with that character area. They are also providing a 10-foot greenway along Nashville Pike, as their sidewalk connection. And they're providing the buffer yards as required by code. Staff does recommend approval of this plan based on consistencies as we described in the staff report with 10 conditions. This item does require a public comment since this is a rezoning request, and it would go on to City Council with this board's recommendation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Julian. At this time, I'll open a public comment for item 12, the Gallatin Gap rezoning with preliminary master development plan. Anyone wishing to speak, please come up, state your name for the record, and limit comments to 5 minutes.
All right, Kevin Relaford, 102 Secretariat Place, and I work at 200 Gap Boulevard there at the Gap Distribution Center. I'm the Vice President and Co-Head of Regional Logistics, so thank you for having me here this evening. I'm here representing Gap, but also as a citizen of the community as well as someone who works here. We're supportive of this as one of the largest private employers in the city. We're constantly looking for people. Over the last 7 years, Gap has invested over $120 million in technology as well as infrastructure as we move to omni operations, right, to make sure that people get product. This is the largest distribution center in Gap's global operations, right? So we've done a significant amount of investment because of our relationship with Gallatin in this community. And we missed our goal of employees by over 300 this last year, right? So a couple things. I'm not going to get into a lot of details about the architecture. You got the developers and others here to make sure all that pencils. We wanted to make sure that this looks good and it complements what the community is looking for. I'm going to speak specifically about a couple things. One, that it is mixed use, and so having a retail component is important to us. But the biggest thing that I want to share about is talking about from a Gap standpoint is the Gap discounted housing, or what you call it, obtainable housing or workforce housing, is something that's near and dear to us. And my understanding is there's not a lot of examples of that here in Gallatin or in this part of the community. We will get into some of the details. We want it to be significant. We also want it to be something that we can get behind. Most of our employees actually do not live immediately around the place of the distribution center. It's about 3.5 million square feet of what we built in the distribution center, and that's about 60 plus football fields, right? So that's a lot of area for people to come. And currently we have over 2,500 unique employees. So this isn't going to have enough housing for everyone, right? We understand that. However, this is going to be an investment in having people that live near where they're going to work. And my understanding, we'll have an opportunity for people that do work there. They're going to have an access, so they won't have to get in their cars and drive on the road to get there. So there will be access from the development to Gap. So again, we think this is something that's going to complement Gap. It's going to complement the community. We want it to look nice, and it's going to help us be able to support the things that we're trying to do going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
James Fenton with the Economic Development Agency. In the 12 years I've been here, I've never advocated for multifamily housing, but I'm going to make an exception with that tonight. Given the relationship my office has had with Gap and what they've done for this community, the fact that I think close to a year ago now we had a think tank on right in this room on attainable housing, and it was difficult for us even to figure out what to call it. Now the fact that we've got a private employer that's willing to be a part of that and work on that, I really feel that that's something that's important, that we start to move forward and try this out. Additionally, the retail that they're talking about, looking at a QSR, drive-through kiosk, and a mart, should bring in an extra $240,000 a year on sales tax as an estimate there also, if this goes forward. So thank you.
Thank you, James. All right, see no one else getting up to speak for public comment on this item. Close public comment and ask for a representative of the developer or applicant.
Good evening. My name is Josh Rowland. I'm with Kimley Horn. We're at 10 Lee Avenue in Nashville. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Thankful that the roads were clear and it was a safe drive up here. Thank you for the opportunity to come back. We were in front of you a little over a month ago, and the main part of our conversation at that time was the discussion of the architecture. So we took an intentional pause and went back to our architecture group, and I believe, we've come forward tonight with a much improved plan that is kind of meeting the expectations of the city. We've addressed it in a couple of different ways. 360-degree architecture, all four sides of the building. We have 30% masonry. We're proposing a two-tone brick option that has a red and a gray brick to accent that farmhouse aesthetic that we were talking about at the previous meeting. And then just kind of that enhanced color palette with some accents throughout the elevations as well. That carries into the garages and the clubhouse, and it's a nice, consistent theme. We were able to address the majority of staff's additional kind of cleanup comments on the plans. We appreciate the recommendation for approval tonight and the gentleman that spoke before me as well. We're going to remove the right-in, right-out lane that's mentioned in the staff comments along Nashville Highway. There was some confusion about some older versions of the roadway thoroughfare plan, and so we recognize that the 350-foot spacing can't be met. We're going to remove that before we go to council. The one thing that was mentioned about access to the Gap campus, there's been comments about providing access between this development and the Gap campus. What we've added on the plan is a pedestrian access to get residents a walkable connection. We have, I talked with Aaron today, we have talked internally on our team. The portion of Gap Boulevard to the north of the property is between two gates. So that's a completely private access for employees and the kind of the facilitation of that campus. They've got infrastructure on that road. They got pump stations. They have transformers. Gap is not comfortable allowing for the general public to kind of move in and out of those spaces. So that's why we have proposed pedestrian access in lieu of vehicular. So that is one comment that we wanted to mention tonight, that we're not able to meet that request to provide two vehicular access points to Gap Boulevard. But with that, that's kind of the summary of the main comments. We're going to meet the other small cleanup items as well. We appreciate your time and consideration, and I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
Anybody have questions? Well, I'll ask. I think we talked about it at the work session. Of the 372 units, how many of these units are being offered for that obtainable housing for the workforce?
I'm going to let Andrew Steffens with Wood Partners, the applicant, answer that.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Andrew Steffens, Wood Partners, 929 Gale Lane, Nashville. So that's still being discussed and negotiated with Gap, but right now it's looking like it's 25 units that'll be employee discounted housing.
The others will just be market rate?
Correct.
When do you expect to have that finalized?
I'd say probably in the next 120 days. There's a lot of kind of legal paperwork that goes into having an agreement like that, and we just wanted to kind of make further progress before we kick that portion off with the attorneys. But the conceptual agreement between the two business parties is what was stated.
I don't love that the access all has to come onto Nashville Pike. I do understand the need for the housing. Believe it or not, we get an increasing number of calls from usually parents of students at Vol State who are looking for housing because their kids coming here to be an athlete or their kids just coming here to go to community college. And so I see
I see that certainly having an advantage for the apartments too. I also hate that it's such a large number. I hate that it's apartments, but if all the other apartments had not come up here in Gallatin in recent years, this would be such a perfect place. It's just not a perfect time, but I do think it's a good development. I think it makes sense. This is the conundrum that we face all the time, because we have to look at not necessarily what's right this minute, but what's best for the long-term development of Gallatin. And like somebody said, may have been Mr. Fenton, Gap doesn't ask for much from the city of Gallatin, and the fact that this is their property and this development helps them with their employment base, I think is very compelling too.
I think that Vol State component would be really nice to have in there.
I guess my question is if, I like the appeal that it's for some obtainable housing, and for the 25 potential workers, there's a benefit, but if the rest of it.
350.
But that's 300 and, 48 or so of market rate, and does adding more market rate apartments in an area that's not zoned for them make sense at this time? So I appreciate the intent, but I have a hard time with that.
Yeah, I'll address Mayor Brown's comment on the access first, and then I'll hit on that. So there is vehicular access to Harris Lane as well. So it's not the only one.
Oh, and is there pedestrian access to Ball State? I'm trying to look on the plan about where they.
They're not
access the
adjacent,
campus.
I don't think, in a way that we can do that, but we can certainly study that. I mean, Ball State being a part of our community would be
Eventually,
great.
but we're building that one greenway. I'm not sure if it's on that side of the road at that point, along Nashville Pike.
Right. So,
could be
yeah, that
access.
is part of our plan. I guess it's 10-foot green space, and then the pedestrian greenway that runs on the front, which I would assume would connect to Ball State in some way. So, yeah, that's part of our plan, and we're excited to participate in that. And then, Matt, I wanted to comment on the units and the percentage of units. We're a local developer. We are trying to do the best that we can to be a partner of Gallatin and be a partner of Gap. Those 25 units represent somewhere between $1.6 million and 2 point something in value for the project. So as much as I'd like to give 100 units, the deal wouldn't be financeable, and we wouldn't have any development on that site by us. So, we've studied it. We're trying to, again, partner with the community and partner with Gap to get the deal done. I wish we could do more, but unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to finance the project.
Understand. Anyone else have any comments or questions for the applicant?
I guess I'll add a comment. I like the attainable housing option. I guess my only comment is I'm not fully wowed, by the architecture.
Not either. I
And
can't
if-
remember what it looked like before, but.
But I think before it was all just white hardy.
Yeah, it was very basic.
Very basic. Me personally, I still feel like it's basic. I think hardy can look really, really good. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I feel like that if we're gonna have a product that you can see so well from Gallatin Road, that it needs to look. I feel like it needs to look better.
Cool.
It's worth stating that, the first building, the closest it is over 300 feet, and it's behind a 40 to 50 foot tall vegetative buffer along that creek. And that's really what has kept this property from developing as entirely commercial over the years, is that encumbrance. There we've got wetlands and streams along there, and so commercial developers are interested in the front portions.
Yes.
That's why we have a great partner with us. And, I'm not stating that proximity to say it's a reason why we did subpar architecture. This is high quality,
Yeah.
durable materials with intentional color treatments and it's efficient architecture. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we'll agree to disagree. We think it's a pretty good looking building.
I think, I will say, I mean, I fully understand the development pattern. Obviously, keeping the commercial along Gallatin Road is a must. Will the front half of the development be in a fill condition?
No, there's some grading that has to occur, but it's all pretty close to where it's going to be.
Okay.
And that section that we provided does kind of show some accurate grade. The 3D renderings are accurate in the sense that they're showing the true topography. And yes, you'll see some rooftops and some portions of the third floor of the units, but it's screened pretty heavily with the existing vegetation. And I think, the points about even the market rate units are, affordable for many of the GAP employees, for students, that want to bunk up and share rent at apartments. So, I mean, it's a great location for multifamily for those reasons. Folks can walk to Ball State, folks can walk to the GAP employment campus, and that's why we're excited about the project.
Has a traffic study been done?
No.
No? I know it's not a requirement. Yeah.
What's the breakdown on bedrooms?
Yeah, it's ones and twos and threes, actually. But Mayor Brown, I don't have that information right off the bat. I want to say it's maybe 45, 45, 5, or it's close. It's even ones and twos, and I think maybe we have 10% threes, if I can recall. I'm not 100% positive at the moment, but it's somewhere in that.
What about the 25 GAP properties? Are those ones or twos?
They're ones and twos, and that was part of the conversation and kind of dialing in with GAP what their needs are. So it's 16 or 17 and 8, 17 ones and 8 twos.
Do you expect those to be scattered? I mean, they'll be just like all the others. They'll just have a different, okay.
That's right. Yeah, they'll have all the access to amenities and pedestrian walkways, and they won't be in one building that's in the back. I mean, they'll be just a part of the community.
Awesome.
I wanted to clarify with the applicant, with your response, when you came up and spoke, are you wanting to remove condition number 7 based on that two vehicular connections to GAP?
Yes, we've determined with GAP that they need the security of those gated, of that gated portion of GAP Boulevard behind the site.
I think a lot of discussion around apartments over the last couple of years, and, especially we've seen more and more of areas that are zoned commercial get turned into housing, because there's demand for that today. Well, I understand there's not current demand for this site for commercial use. It doesn't mean in the future that won't change. So, I'm hesitant to rezone that piece of property and lose the opportunity for it to develop differently forever. And I don't want anybody at GAP to take that the wrong way. GAP's a fantastic partner for the city of Gallatin.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that this project this way is right at this time for the city.
And I can speak to that, actually. This piece of property has been commercially zoned and on the market for over a decade. There are no commercial developers that want to develop this piece of property because of the complications with the stream. So that's why we're here.
Is there a potential option to reduce the number of units within the development?
We have to study that. Again, it's, as we stand here today, we have a finance deal with an institutional financial partner, which is, what a community would want, because their standards of operation and execution are as high as anybody's. Once we start reducing units, there's a high likelihood that it breaks the back of of the underwriting, and they don't want to do the deal anymore.
I love the fact that we have attainable housing, but we have apartments, and that's just an issue. I think that it's in the right place. I don't know about the timing.
John, do you have a comment?
No, only that I have a little bit different take on it, and that is that it doesn't matter to me whether it's 25 units reserved for GAP or if it's 50 or 75. GAP's a wonderful employer. I understand why they're doing that, but we don't make decisions. I don't think we should make decisions on how it benefits any one organization, even if they're the one bringing the land to the table. What I do think is important is that I bought into the whole high density in the primary infrastructure corridors in order to keep us from sprawling out and overtaxing our infrastructure into outlying areas. So that's why I'm in favor of apartments, because if we don't accept some apartments in the higher density areas, then expect the sprawl to occur. And this is an area that needs and warrants the higher density and the apartment development. Right next to a college, right next to a major industry. If ever there was a place for apartments, which people frown on the word apartments in general, but if ever there was a place for apartments, this is the location of it. I'm not sold on the architecture that we're seeing on this right now. But as far as what goes in that area, yeah, I think absolutely. And I think commercial was always destined to be along that front Nashville Pike corridor. So the usage is good. I'm not completely sold on the architecture yet.
I appreciate that.
Good point.
Mr. Greer, you're very right. I mean, I have such affection for GAP and all that they do for the community, but you were very right. We should not. And your other points were really, really good, too. Nobody here loves your architecture, y'all. But I don't know what to tell you I want to see.
All right, well, I mean, we've talked about it at length. Is anyone prepared to make a motion?
Revised architecture. I mean, that's terrible to ask without knowing what I'm asking for. What would y'all say, you who are more in the design realm?
I mean, I don't want to start designing people's buildings for them, but I think there's plenty of examples of projects that have come through recently in areas that had the zoning and the rights for apartments that were aesthetically a much better looking product. So there's certainly examples out there, but.
I'll say, this, I think what you're looking at right here isn't the representation of what you'll see when you first drive up. I think there's a slide that shows the clubhouse and the entry drive.
The corridor is lovely. I meant to say that earlier. Thank you. It is beautiful.
Thank you. And then, that's an interesting slide. If you'll go back, show again, kind of reiterating, showing the view shed of the commercial being the building on the left, the tiny little cars on the far left, and then, shows you the distance and kind of the angle and the view shed of where the multifamily buildings will be placed on that site. So you'll have commercial activity up front and then walkable from the commercial back to the residential, but you really won't be able to see much of the residential due to the commercial buildings and the stream buffer, which has the vegetation.
But you will see it when you get there.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a product that, I'm a local developer. I've lived in Nashville and Middle Tennessee for 21 years and lived in Tennessee my whole life. But I work for a national developer, and this is what we specialize in. And this is a product that we use in cities all across the country. So I'm not saying that makes it okay to put it in Gallatin, but, we study architecture, we study building design, and, this is, it's a good product. And,
Mix of materials may look different in person.
Sure, yeah.
I appreciate all of that. I think, there's clearly concerns with the architecture, with the rezoning piece of it. And we've got to do something to move this along. Since I can't support it with the architecture and as it is, I'll make a motion to deny the rezoning.
shades of gray would be better than the red and gray.
So no second? All right, the motion dies for lack of a second. So Mayor, you had a comment?
I'm sorry. I just, just sitting here looking at the pictures. I think shades of gray would be better than the red and the dark gray, but I don't know. I'm not.
I do too.
terrible
and-
at-
Color palette is something that we can play with, for sure.
And I think, something in a drawing looks different than something in person, depending on the, how the materials complement or clash against one another.
Yeah, I can agree. I think there's improvements that can be done to the architecture, but again, it's not our job to design the buildings for them. But I'm hesitant, again, to send it on, get it rezoned, and provide a vested right without a product that everybody's in love with.
We send it to the next planning commission, work session, come back with a different look for us.
Something we have done on other projects and could certainly be done here. And before I make the recommendation, I do want to point out that red is brick. That's masonry on 2 floors there. The gray brick is kind of wrapping the side. So I just want to make sure everyone was clear. We do have 2 floors of masonry on those tower elements and then full floor brick around the rest of the sides. But it's very common when you have, I think we have 9 or 10 buildings on here to have 2 or 3 different color palettes within one development. And, if we need to add a condition that says, the site plan coming in or the final development plan is going to show you those, a variation of color, that's certainly doable. If we feel like some variation and some change in color palettes is something you want to see.
So if we agree to changing the zoning without knowing what this is going to look like, we're open to whatever.
Right.
So we need to bring this back.
Well, if there's a condition that you add tonight that requires that we provide 3 distinct color palettes across all the buildings,
That would suffice for color, but that doesn't go to the architecture and the mix of the materials. That's just color.
well, do you want to, say that we change colors and move materials around? The bones are the bones, right? The unit mix and the layout and the doors and the corridors. But the skin is something that we can provide options for. And if the condition is that when we come back to you for a final development plan, that we present those options and you approve them at that time. We're trying to get zoning today so we can move forward. And I think the point was made correctly that, it's maybe a little premature to be talking, colors and specific.
Well, but it's also just the flat nature of the building and.
I think the challenge is we're a recommending body. If we recommend this to be approval, it's going to go to the city council recommending for an approval. And, I'm not getting the sense from this body that we're comfortable with this as it's being presented to send it on.
Is this product somewhere where we could see it?
We have a bunch of projects around Middle Tennessee that you could see, but we don't have this product on the ground here. So unfortunately not.
What are some of the projects that you've done in the area?
Alta Farms at Cane Ridge is a really wonderful project that I think, kind of feels a little bit like this site. We've got a great pedestrian access, walking trails, and Alta Riverwalk, which now they've renamed it, but that's in Metro Center. It's a 4-story garden deal. Really good looking.
All right, well, we need to make a decision one way or another and move this item forward. I've already made a motion, failed for lack of a second. Does anyone else wish to make a motion?
Alta Farms, I like it better. It has balconies on the front, I guess.
The only other option is to approve it. So, we have to do something.
Alta Farms looks fantastic.
Yeah, well, it has the porches and the balconies, and so it has the dimension that this doesn't, which I would think this could if it's going to be a market rate.
Alta Farms is a different, I mean, it's not the same product, like I said, it's a different product in a different market.
Would you consider it a higher end product?
The rents are higher.
14 to
That's not an answer.
2,600.
Yeah.
I mean,
All right, well,
Made a suggestion about a condition. What other suggestions would you have so that we're not denying this, but that we leave it open for, to figure something out?
my personal opinion is I'd like to see it, if it's going to come back, I'd like to see it come back
to us.
to us with the architecture and things that make this body support it. At this point, I'm not going to support it, so.
Well, I don't know, what would you do to the building? Since we don't know what you guys want to see, what do you want to see?
I like Aberley too, but you'll likely say that's a different product.
Downtown.
So we've got some really nice looking apartment complexes that have been built in the city of Gallatin that I think
Vintage
are,
at Foxland and
that are all,
Madison.
that are all full and doing well, so. So,
Vintage at Foxland looks great. I mean, the product on the north side of Harris looks great. I mean,
Vintage.
I think getting back to the capitalization of the project, and since we've been working on it and trying to raise money for the project, we want to work with you guys and try to find solutions, but I don't know a whole lot. We can't increase the budget of this project or it doesn't go. So unfortunately, we're kind of in a tough position.
Would you have to increase the budget to change the architecture?
yeah.
Kind of going back to what Mr. Pereira said earlier, that's really not a piece that we're supposed to be considering either.
Oh,
Figure out what
but,
looks good here.
I mean, I absolutely love what John said. I mean, I think he hit nail right on the head. But at the same time, I want what's on the corridor to look good.
the challenge is if we vote to change the zoning and it has the rights to do the multifamily apartments on it, then we're going to be sitting here in the conundrum of, we've got a vested right to build it, we don't want to spend any more money.
Correct.
And now we're in a position where we have less control over the architecture.
Correct.
So again.
Hold on.
Yeah, certainly.
Tasha Alexander, Assistant City Attorney, you are missing the boat. You are a recommending body. City Council will determine whether this gets rezoned or not. So what we need from this body is your recommendation regarding that rezoning, whether you approve it without the exceptions that they're asking for, whether you deny it, but you're recommending this to the City Council as to whether to rezone or not. They will have to approve this, not this body.
But it has the PMDP, and so if we're recommending as is, then we're recommending that. I mean, can we say we?
But they don't have to take your recommendation.
I
The city
understand that.
council can have the same argument as you guys are having. What they need from you is a recommendation one way or the other, whether you approve of the rezone without allowing exceptions to our ordinance as it is, which means you stick to the 70% architecture, whatever it's required, or you give a reason why you want it built differently. But again, you're just making a recommendation. I think you are making this really too hard on yourself. Even with the plan, it's still a recommendation that the city council has to approve. So even if you rezone right now, say you agree to rezone, they may disagree with the rezone, and it's a moot point. But you all just need to give some recommendation to that body so that they can make that decision.
But it's, how do we send a recommendation through? Say we say yes on the rezone, but no on the architecture, then what is that recommendation? I mean, I feel like when we send a recommendation, it's supposed to be we're okay with about everything, unless we articulate a difference on a condition or something.
Right, but you're saying, from what I'm hearing, that you're not okay with the architecture. But as Mr. Harris has said, you can't design this for them, but you're
Right.
giving them ideas of what you want. And so if what you want is some of the ones you said you saw and you liked, then that would be what you would recommend.
But the architecture is part of the PMDP, and we can't,
Right, but
I'm
you
not
have-
arguing, I'm just trying to get my
Right, but you
head
have all
around it, 'cause
talked
we
about
don't-
something that you like. So if you're going to approve the rezone, then you articulate the architecture that you feel is best for the city of Gallatin. So I think what we're missing the boat is they're asking for exceptions. If you don't want to give them the exceptions, don't give the exceptions. And I'm not sure how it's written,
But
the
the
resolution.
exception is not about this design, it's about the composition of the building, and it's the design that we have an issue with here. I think the right thing to do would be to defer it, and heck, we're not usually this.
Right, but you need to have a really strong kind of legal basis to ask for this deferral, because the design is, I don't know, where is that listed in the zoning ordinance, the design?
Well, what
For
can we
the
say? We recommend
architecture?
approval.
Because I think it's just, we're talking 70% brick or 30%,
Recommend
whatever.
different,
What are
Well,
we?
that's the exception is they are asking for an exception from the 70% brick requirement.
So,
It doesn't go into any detail but design
Right,
aspects.
so when we're talking about design, how do we legally support
What's the question?
putting that as a condition on these applicants?
You could recommend it with no condition, with no exceptions to the zoning ordinance. That would bring the
But you
70%.
don't necessarily mean that doesn't necessarily make a good development.
Yeah, I don't think
What
that
if-
solves your conversation.
Yeah, well, I think what, maybe the path is to say recommend, but look to seeing different architecture considerations at the council level. I mean,
Is that appropriate?
Please, John.
I don't know.
Go ahead,
Mr.
John.
Norton, I
John.
sit there-
What I've always understood is that if we, somebody should ask for an exception to the 70% architectural standards, not based on trying to save money, but on providing an attractive alternative to that. And what I'm hearing the applicant say is that the exception to the 70% brick or stone requirement in this case is to save money for, I understand the reason, is to provide an affordable price point for the people that work in the area. But we're not supposed to grant an exception based on cost, affordability. So I can't grant an exception to it unless it's an attractive alternative that I like even better than just solid brick, because solid brick isn't always that pretty. It's just durable.
No, I mean, both
Totally
the
open.
projects that we looked at were far more industrial that they built.
But where I understand the applicant's frustration is he's asking, well, then what do you want? And we can't tell him. I can tell him that he nailed it when he said, the bones are there. It's the skin that we're talking about. And we're talking about aesthetic improvements, maybe some relief. I don't know if you go so far as balconies. That's a big, big change. But there was one that came through for us over there near the old Young's Nursery or in that area, and it had the farmhouse look. It had a lot of, it had like shutters and stuff like that. We're talking about lipstick put on it. But it sure made it look a lot better, and it was an alternative to the 70% brick. I don't know how much you can make. I don't know how thin your margin is on your price point right now, but some improvements need to be made to this because this isn't, to me, an attractive alternative to the 70% brick.
And I also don't want 70% brick. Like, I don't think 70% brick is attractive.
Yeah.
I agree. So, I guess the question for Jill, I mean, we're not obligated to grant a rezoning. So I mean, if we don't grant the rezoning, how long would it be before they can bring it back with a different plan?
If it's, it will
It'll
go,
still go
yeah,
to
it'll go
council
to
as a negative
council with your recommendation. And then if it's, you can't bring the same plan over and over, you can bring variations and you can change things. So they could come back with a different plan.
I'll go back to my, original motion, but with a different thing. My motion is to deny or to send a negative recommendation to council to approve this as it's been presented and give them the opportunity to have their conversation about it. But I can't send it on with a favorable recommendation.
So this would be on the council to make the recommendations.
Still goes on to council. It's just come with a negative recommendation for the plan as presented to the planning commission.
I get it.
And you could say why.
Right.
And clearly the reason why, that's been stated by multiple members is the architecture and the aesthetics. So
Motion is up.
that's my motion.
May I
I'll
ask,
second that.
may I ask a question before, discussion before you have the motion?
Please, yeah.
You got a second on the floor?
I've got a second. Is it a discussion for us or for the applicant?
It was a question for the city attorney's office. If a motion in the negative fails, is that a recommendation for approval?
A motion and the negative fails, then that motion is denied, but you still have to have a motion to approve.
You still have to have a second.
So it's not by default. A motion in the negative that fails doesn't,
Mean it's approved.
right.
I mean, are we not allowed to defer it? I mean,
That's up to these
That,
guys.
that'd be the applicant's choice.
No, we can defer.
I mean,
Defer it, but the clock starts ticking.
Yeah.
If I could, I mean, we've deferred once, and we heard you about the architecture, and we came back with our best foot forward here. I think we've expressed some additional, work we're willing to do with the skin of the building, if it's additional color palettes, if it's moving some of the materials around. It's not material changes like adding balconies or changing the.
Not to interrupt, but just from a parliamentary standpoint, we've got a motion with a second on the floor, and the commissioner was asking a question to the attorney. So if we want to suspend rules and allow them to speak, I'm open to that. But at this point, I mean, we've got a motion on the table that we need to.
Motion to suspend the rules.
All right, motion to suspend the rules. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, sir, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate that we did a deferral last time, and we came back and we went back to the drawing boards, did more work on these elevations, brought forward what we thought was a good effort on improving the aesthetics here. And we're willing to do what we've stated in terms of providing additional color palettes and moving some materials around. But other than that being added as a condition or an exception, we would ask that we be voted on either for approval or denial tonight and not a deferral.
Okay, thank you. All right, motion to reinstate the rules. All right, got a motion to reinstate. A second? Sure. All right, a second to reinstate. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Okay. All right, folks, we got a motion on the table for a recommendation of a non-favorable recommendation to go on to city council. We've got a second, and the applicants asked that we, either vote to approve it or to deny it. So we've got a motion on the table. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the negative recommendation to city council, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so be unanimous for our negative recommendation denial on to city council. All right, folks, it is a little after 7 o'clock. We've been going for 2 hours. And so we're going to take a 10-minute recess, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes. Thank you, Jim. Good. All right, everybody, we're going to call back to order this meeting of the City of Gallatin Planning Commission. And we are going to move on to item number 13, resolution number 2024-010, Avery Trace amended preliminary master development plan and final master development plan.
The owner and applicant request approval of an amended PNDP and FMDP for Avery Trace. This is for 205 single-family detached residential lots and 88 single-family attached residential lots. This is located adjacent to East Main Street, and their zoning was recently approved for R8 PRD. The FMDP is consistent with the approved PMDP, other than they did have to remove 2 lots due to stormwater restrictions. Otherwise, the layout is consistent with that PMDP, as well as the architecture, the access, and the buffer yards. Staff did recommend this item be considered a minor amendment, but due to the decrease in density, we would ask for a public hearing to be called on this item as well. Staff recommends approval of this application with 9 conditions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And so this item does come with a public comment. And so with that, I will open public comment on Avery Trace preliminary master development plan. All right, seeing no one wishing to speak, I'll close public comment on item 13 and ask for a representative for the applicant.
Chairman, I have to recuse myself from this item.
All right, thank you, CJ.
Mike Stanton, represent the applicant developer. Just want to reiterate that it's a pleasure to work with staff and professionalism that we always get from them and guidance, and we're in agreement with their conditions.
Okay, and so just for clarity, so this is actually a net reduction in lot count. Everything else is substantially the same. Okay. I mean,
To approve.
I got a motion to approve by Councilman George.
Move it be a minor amendment.
So, hold your, so yeah, we got a motion to be a minor amendment by Albert. Do I have a second? All right, second by Councilman George. All those in favor of being a minor amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, passes unanimously as a minor amendment. So now I'll entertain your motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
All right, with staff's 9 conditions of approval? Second. All right, so I got a motion and a second for approval with staff's 9 conditions. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes unanimously.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Appreciate
sir. That brings us to item number 14, which is resolution number 2024-012, Westfield Phase 2B, amended preliminary master development plan and final master development plan.
Yes, the owner and applicant request approval of an amended PNDP and revised FMDP for Westfield Phase 2B. This is about 15 acres, and I have the section shown on your screen. This revision has come back to you because they had to also remove 2 lots at the end of the cul-de-sac shown on your screen. This final plat came through last month with a condition to revise their FMDP to be consistent. Due to the decrease in density, staff did recommend this item be considered a minor amendment, and we recommended approval with 5 conditions. And we would have a public comment on this item, please.
All right, thank you, ma'am. With that, we will open a public comment on item 14, Westfield Phase 2B. Anybody wishing to speak, please come forward. All right, seeing no one wishing to speak, close public comment and ask for a representative of the applicant.
Evening, Jason Morlock Engineering, representing the developer. Just go ahead and state, this plan's the exact same, just lost the 2 lots, just like the last one, Avery Trace. I did want to discuss comment 2, which is to show and label a 50-foot wide access easement from the end of the cul-de-sac to the eastern property boundary. All that I asked there, we're fine with the easement, but given the proximity to the creek to get over to the eastern property boundary, I would like to work with engineering and Aaron to come up with potentially a location other than the end of the cul-de-sac. It would allow us to cross the creek in a more perpendicular manner to have less impact to the creek, and also it would work better with the layout of the neighboring PMDP, which I have gotten from the engineer, which is the paddock development. And I show the easement where I think would be the better location on that attachment, but it's just a little bit away from the cul-de-sac by maybe 75 feet or 100 feet. And if it ends up having to be the cul-de-sac, you know, we can deal with that, but I would just like to work with you if we could do that. Agree with everything else.
All right, well, let's first address whether it's a minor or a major amendment. I'll make a motion to be a minor amendment.
Second.
All right, got a motion by myself, second by CJ. All those in favor of being a minor amendment, say yes.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes unanimously to be a minor amendment. And then kind of on to the question, Aaron, are you comfortable working with the applicant to modify condition 2 and where that happens over there?
Sure, yeah, I mean, as we get into the design and the, of those plans, whatever's makes more sense as far as, you know, lesser impact to the creek and easier to construct. That's fine.
Yeah, that was a leftover, that was something from the original FMDP that was done a number of years ago. So I don't think it was fully definitive at that point where that connection would show up, but we wanted that connection in some way.
And I think sometimes that happens sometimes where you put it where you think would be the best place, and then as you get into the design, it works better somewhere else. But as long as the intent is there, that's
That sounds good. I'll make a motion to approve with staff's 5 conditions approval, adding to condition number 2 so that it will now read, show and label a 50-foot wide access easement from the end of the cul-de-sac to the eastern property boundary. And we'll add the sentence, or other location suitable to City of Gallatin Engineering Department.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seems pretty straightforward. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 15, which is Resolution 2024-005, Woods Ferry rezoning with a preliminary master development plan.
All right. The owner and applicant request to rezone 16.6 acres from the R40 low density residential district, R20 low density residential district, and CS commercial services district to the MRO multiple residential and office district with a preliminary master development plan for the Woods Ferry residential development consisting of 31 single-family detached residential lots and 53 single-family attached residential lots, totaling 84 units, located east of Woods Ferry Road and west of Highway 109. Single-family detached and attached dwelling units are permitted in the MRO, multiple residential and office zone district. The applicant's requesting various exceptions to the MRO zone district requirements, including front and side yard setbacks for both single-family and detached and attached units, and minimum lot size exceptions for all units. The applicant has also submitted an alternate architecture plan. I guess I will start with, once we get through all the architecture, of which there's a lot. All right, so Plain Gallatin designates this area as kind of a split between 2 character areas, general urban and suburban. And so the recommended densities, general urban is 5 to 15 units an acre. Suburban is 2 to 5 units an acre, as was previously talked about in a different project. The proposed density here is 5.86 units per acre, including a reduction in countable area for density due to this floodplain area on the property. So there is the split character area there. And then going through kind of the architecture, it indicates single-family homes, various facades, mostly fiber hardy board and batten with brick, kind of visual features on the fronts for many of these units. And then townhome units of brick stone on the sides and fronts. Let me get so sides and fronts, and then hardy siding on the rears. The proposed architecture for this is similar to Oxford Station, if y'all are familiar with that development. Staff has included a condition requesting that all siding be labeled as either fiber hardy board or board and batten. Some of the renderings basically label siding but don't label material. So we just want to ensure that vinyl siding won't be used for this project. Planning Commission may also consider requesting a higher brick stone requirement for units that are facing Woods Ferry Road and Highway 109. So on this plan, these 8 units here and any combination of kind of these 12 to 17-ish units that are most exposed to Highway 109. The applicant, it's shown on this site plan that the applicant has intended to program this open space with a variety of things. Final designs for that were not included with the PMDP, but they will be included with the FMDP. And with that, staff recommends approval of resolution number 2024-005 with 16 conditions, and there will be a public comment on this item.
Thank you, Jim. So at this time, we'll open a public comment on item 15. Anyone wishing to speak in regards to this item, please come forward. All right, seeing no one wishing to speak, we'll close public comment and ask for a representative for the applicant.
Chairman, I'll have to recuse myself from this item.
All right, so noted.
Frank Nelson, 615 Design Group. We agree with all staff's comments. We would like to amend, I guess, number 6, just to revise the statement, talking about the typical lot count. We stated on our exceptions for 10-foot front facing. The ones that we have on our typical lots show 5 feet and 7 feet. Those are only ones that front either the backyard, like 109, or the rear loading alleyway. We would just like to amend that to state that the exceptions for those front setbacks to comply with the given typical lot layouts as provided in the PMDP.
Just out of curiosity, why such short front setbacks if they're open to the open space? What's the rationale for that?
The 5 feet, it fronts the open space right there, and then the 7 feet fronts the rear loaded alley. It's just for, I mean, typically those would be fronting a actual road or an actual kind of thoroughfare. If you want to go to the typical lot layout, it's right there. So if you see where the 5 feet and the 7 feet are, it's only in the scenarios where it fronts a rear loaded alley or the open space. But basically, we're saying we just want number 6 to address saying the typical lots that we provided is to be the ones that are the exceptions that we stated. I think we misstated in our exceptions table or our notes for 10 feet.
Then, I guess, are any of the units that you guys are putting in, are any of those located in the area that was the, I guess, the general urban area, or is it just on that back of the property?
I would have to look into that for the townhomes, but I believe it is not for probably the majority of it, so.
And then from the density calculation, Jim, this might be more of a question for you. You referenced the area that's in the floodplain, so how does that get calculated for the density? I know there's some things in the floodplain counting for 50% towards open space requirements, but how does that go to an MRO type zoning?
So similar to that, the area that's in the floodplain can only, instead of being able to count the full 16.6 acres to a density and spread out over the full area, there's a reduction of 50% of that area that can count towards density. So I think the original calculation with the full area was, I want to say 5.06 units an acre. So with that reduction in kind of countable space, it goes to 5.86-ish.
I'm sure nobody's done the math on this, but if you average the total property with the percentages or the max or the densities, the 15 for the general urban and then the suburban, what does that average out to for the entire property? Is this
So for the
within that
entire
range?
property, we could have provided, I believe, 97 units using the 50% reduction in the floodplain, that's including all that. We provide 84. So we are under that. And we do provide that on the site plan and the site data table as well.
Okay.
For the number of units that would be allowed. And then we give the total maximum that we could achieve. It's below in that corner. I know it's blurry, so.
My eyesight's not quite that good. Okay, that makes sense. One thing I did have a question on, just reviewing this, when you go to your elevations, the product that has the primarily the hardy board siding, there's let me see if you can get to one of these. There you go. On the bottom of that, it's calling out exposed concrete on the foundations. Is that really going to be an exposed concrete underneath of the, that's visible? I don't think we've ever allowed that.
For this, I mean, I'd have to, it's brick? Okay, that'll be brick.
There is a condition of approval to require brick water tables for all units.
Yeah.
As well.
Which condition number is that? Okay, just want to.
Yes, number
All right.
10.
All right, that takes care of that concern, so. And then, you talked about on the parking, last time we had this at the work session, we were talking about the parking for some of those units. Were you guys able to add any clarification to adequate parking for?
So, yeah, I think we made a color sheet for the site plan. Right there. So if you look at the blue right there, we have 2 car garages, 2 driveway spaces, and then if you look at the yellow, it kind of feathers in. I think we've kind of talked about that, where we have adequate parking between garage and driveways. I think the question that was brought up during work session was the 9 units, the skinny ones right over there. We did add 5 parking spaces on one of the corners, but if you look in the vicinity right there, there's about 20 immediate spaces for the surface parking for those units to supply for those, because they're the only ones that have a single car garage entry. Also, talking with Parkside, just like they have done for, I believe, Oxford Station and a few others, when they set up their HOA, they strictly enforce parking requirements where you can't have cars kind of grasping over that sidewalk in that driveway or parallel parking into a rear-loaded alleyway to account for a parking space that then clogs up the whole subdivision. So that would be enforced, and I think we're well above parking requirements if you account for garages, driveways, and surface parking.
That makes sense. Some of the neighborhoods that I've been involved in have had restrictions in their restrictive covenants that require that the garages be used for parking cars and not for storage. And that definitely becomes a concern when we have these neighborhoods where there's not as much parking or wide public streets, so. Okay.
And I do want to note that if you look at like the surrounding townhomes, those are all minimum 25-foot driveway lots too. So even including that, there's enough for those truck overhangs and stuff like that for that variety. But happy to answer any other questions.
Anybody else have any comments, questions?
Did what we asked.
Was that a motion?
Oh, sorry. Motion to.
Okay. Got a motion to approve. I do have a question on the motion. Are you are you addressing his request to clarify the site data table exception request as condition number 6?
Yes.
Okay. Can you state that?
I could reiterate that we want the front setback to correspond to the provided typical lot layout as provided in the PMDP
Exactly.
exception.
That's the motion.
Okay, you got that? Okay. So we've got a motion with an amendment to condition number 6. Do I have a second? All right, second by the mayor. All right, well, see no further discussion. I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor with the recommendation of staff's approval modifying condition number 6, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No opposed. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on. Item number 16, resolution number 2024-006, 370 and 380 Lower Station Camp Creek annexation and plan of service.
The owners and applicant request approval of a annexation request. This is for 2 parcels between Big Station Camp Boulevard and Lower Station Camp Creek Road. They are totaling approximately 49.36 acres. These properties are contiguous to the city limits. They border the city limits to the north, the east, and the kind of the southeast, and then the urban growth boundary follows along the creek to the south. This proposed annexation will not include any portion of Lower Station Camp Creek Road or any property south of that public roadway. So this is only property north of that roadway. Most of that area is in floodplain anyway, so this is just property north. There are 3 other parcels within this block that have gone to city council for permission to apply for annexation. Should these 2 parcels get through the annexation process and get annexed, we can anticipate that those other 3 will come in as well and follow the same process. There is no development plan at this time for these properties. There is a need from the owner perspective for utilities, in particular Gallatin Electric, and being on the Gallatin grid versus the Nashville grid. So that is part of the motivating factor for annexation. This is also the last little block right in this area, as it is surrounded by city limits on 3 sides. And so that is as another portion of this annexation request. This property is in the general urban community character area. And we did include your plan of service for your review based on staff comments from various departments in the city. Staff does recommend approval of the annexation request. This will require a public hearing and will go on to city council with your recommendation. Thank you.
Jillian? All right, this item has a public comment, and so at this time I will open a public comment on the annexation request and plan of service for 370 and 380 Lower Station Camp Creek Road. Anyone wishing to speak, come forward. All right, seeing no one wishing to speak, we'll close the public comment on item number 16 and ask for a representative for the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Clay Haynes. I am here on behalf of the applicant. My company's Public Square. We're located right here on the corner at 106 Public Square. Really appreciate Jillian's thoughtful comments here. Kind of 2 really primary motivating factors. Number 1, these are the individual landowners. This is their primary residence. So both of them live at this location. And it really all kind of hinges on continuity. One is continuity of service, right? You're surrounded by the city limits of Gallatin. These properties are currently serviced by Nashville Electric Service. They are literally the very last meter in the line. They cannot be serviced by Gallatin Department of Electricity unless they're annexed into the city of Gallatin. So that's number one. And then number two really relates to this body, which is a continuity of planning. Right now, this falls outside of your jurisdiction. I don't know what this will become. That's really going to be up to this body at some future date. But if you look to the north, you have very dense multifamily residential. If you look across the street, you have a mixed-use development that includes a convenience store, a hotel, housing, and then to the south, you have Sumner Station, right? It's in the general urban plan. At some point, someone will come back before you, and that's really going to be up to this body. But I think that there's a consensus that a continuity of a planning region along this corridor and not having a broken tooth there that falls outside of it or an island just makes sense. So with that, more than happy to answer any questions.
Do you have any questions? I mean, it makes sense, you know, an area such as this that's surrounded by the city to have it pulled in so that it develops inside the city limits with the utilities and not having Nashville service utilities that far away. So I don't, you know, what it becomes down the road someday is a conversation for another day. I don't know what that'll be. So.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I got a motion to approve by CJ, second by Albert. You can have the next one. So any further discussion? All right, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor of the annexation request, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you, sir. All right, well, that concludes the main agenda for this evening. So other business, I was going to introduce Mr. Thompson. We took care of that a little bit earlier in the evening. Jillian, is there anything else we need to discuss in other business or announcements?
No, I did want to thank our planning staff. Last week, most of us were working from home. I have not left my house till today. And so they had to step up and really put time and effort into these packets with limited resources, with constraints from being at home and being in the office when they could, but that was very limiting. So I just wanted to thank our entire planning staff for a lot of well-done work last week.
I want to thank the Public Works Department for what they did on City Street. Excellent job.
I think they really get kudos for picking up the trash. I think we were probably the only municipality in this area that picked up the trash.
I do want this body to know, if you're interested, we have a special called meeting tomorrow at 5:30 for the consideration of potentially extending an offer to a planning director candidate. And I'm still sad Ms. Ogden wasn't interested, but we're so grateful for what you have done and are doing, and will continue to do.
I'm here to support, but yes.
Awesome. Well, let me just take one moment, and I would want to tell John, thank you for the years of service. And when I joined the Planning Commission a little better than 5 years ago, I knew just about nothing about this. And what I learned, listening to John through the years, and him guiding this body taught me a lot. And I just want you to know how much we appreciate that, and hope I can.
Taught us all, every one of us up here.
So, hope I can fill the shoes. All right, but with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, so moved. All those in favor? Let's go home. Thank you.